Concordia is just one of many maritime accidents that have been attributed to human error. The literature shows that as much as 75% of all maritime accidents are due to lapses by the crew. Several factors have been identified that contribute to human error, including, but not limited to, fatigue, stress, poor teamwork, over-reliance on technology, lack of training, multitasking, etc. I would like to focus my report on multitasking as a cause of maritime accidents. I have used as reference the research of a team from the University of Tasmania, led by a master mariner, Captain Asan Rajapaksa. Captain Rajapaksa and his colleagues identified three causes of multitasking, namely administrative burden, referring to the voluminous paperwork and reports required of the crew by the principal of port state authorities, insufficient crewing, referring to some companies' policy of hiring only the absolute minimum complement to comply with regulatory requirements, and the lack of a speak-up culture aboard ship. The lack of a speak-up culture aboard ship. I would like to spend the remainder of my report on this last element, the lack of a speak-up culture aboard ship. What does this look like? Here is how one junior officer describes it. And the photo is not of the junior officers, just a junior officer. So safety, and his quoted here, is mainly only talk and paperwork. They make noise about unsafe multitasking, and you will be branded as a troublemaker, a person who doesn't help others. We have a motto, according to this JO, we somehow manage with 0 accidents, but accidents still happen. So that's from Rajapaksa's research. One rating describes it like this. The bosun is on one getting jobs from the chief officer and passed on to us. We somehow manage most of the time, but not very safely, doing many jobs simultaneously. So the lack of a speak-up culture actually affects the aviation industry just as much as the maritime industry. And in the case of the aviation industry, it's well documented because of the black box in the cockpit, which records a conversation between the captain and the first officer moments before an accident. It was found that some first officers were too intimidated by a senior captain to say anything about an unsafe situation. So many airline pilots come from military background, the Air Force, where rigid hierarchical structures between superior and subordinate are enforced. So the power distance that is found in these organizations also exists in the Asian cultures, which revere age, rank, position, and tradition. At the MOLMagsaysay Maritime Academy, my school, we equip future officers with the knowledge, skills, and attitude to be excellent seafarers. This includes speaking up, especially when safety is at risk. All our trainings and memos will have little underlying cultural realities that affect the current generation, are not addressed. As Peter Drucker famously said in this slide, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So what are these cultural realities that affect many Filipino Gen Zers, or Zoomers as they are also called? These are some of the main ones. First, there is the Asian honor-shame culture that affects many Asian nations. Honor in this context refers to the respect or the esteem that an individual or a group receives from society. You might have heard of honor killings in some countries, where a woman is killed by close relatives for having a relationship with someone who is not approved by the family. or close relatives or the community. This is an extreme example which thankfully we don't have here in the Philippines. Nevertheless, we Filipinos are affected by the honor-shame culture, as evidenced by words in our vocabulary like napahiya or walang hiya, right? So we have those words. The issue isn't about being right or wrong, but about being honorable or dishonorable. Acquiring honor and avoiding shame or losing face are the highest goals. In an honor-shame society, communication is indirect. Body language and tone of voice are used to communicate feelings. Sometimes what is not said is as important as what is said, sometimes more important. Confrontation is avoided. And since confrontation is not part of the Filipino culture and some other Asian cultures, when we do confront, we are clumsy, we lack practice. So we end up doing it the wrong way and creating a bigger problem than there was at first. Thus, a person who is steeped in the honor and shame culture would rather not speak up to a superior when safety or a higher principle is at risk. As opposed to Western culture, which is guilt and innocence, so everything is measured with the yardstick of right and wrong. Communication is direct. Confrontation is acceptable. And after the confrontation, we all go out for a beer and everything's okay. Another cultural factor that needs to be addressed is the conformist attitude of many Filipinos. To help us understand this attitude, I will refer to Robert Kelly's followership model. As some of you may have seen this, and this has now become a classic in many leadership schools. So in this model, on the horizontal axis, as you go to the left, this refers to a person's level of engagement with the organization. So a person to the left, meaning quadrants 1 and 3, is a passive person, and a person on the right is actively engaged with the organization. On the vertical axis, as the person goes to the top, quadrant 1 and 2, and towards the bottom, that's uncritical or dependent thinker. I'll go over this very quickly, and as I go through this, everyone, to see where you would fall under each of these quadrants, which most closely reflects your own personality. And the second question is, what type of follower or leader do you tend to produce in your organization? So first, the passive follower, bottom left. So to the left, passive, uncritical thinker. Lacks initiative and sense of responsibility, needs much supervision, leaves thinking to the leader. Usually, and this is important, results of leaders who are overly controlling, punishing every mistake. And in the Philippines, we hear this often, no talk, no mistake. Right? So that's a passive follower. The conformist follower, to the right and to the bottom, actively engaged, but uncritical thinker. So willing participant, hardworking, overly concerned about avoiding conflict with the superior, carries out unsafe and even unethical orders. Again, result of leaders who are overly controlling, punishing every mistake. And this is an excuse given at the Nuremberg trials in 1945. I was just following orders. To the left and top, alienated follower. So critical thinker, but passive. Does not contribute to solving problems. This is the type of person who's silent in the conference room, but in the restroom during the break, he gives a long speech. Right? So we know some people. And you can hear this person say, perhaps, I told you so. So, and lastly, you would have the effective follower. To the right, actively engaged, critical thinker. Has courage to initiate change, courageously dissents when necessary, especially when safety or a higher principle is at stake. And this is usually, this type of person is the type that is produced by good mentors. He may have had good mentors and perhaps good parenting. And this is the type of person who would say, Captain, I recommend reduce speed in these restricted waters. Or Captain, I think there's a lot of ice on that wing. We should turn around and de-ice. For one well-documented crash. So there are other cultural concerns that we need to take care of. Asian honor-shame culture, conformist attitude, power distance, colonial mentality. You know, for many Asian cultures who endured the Philippines 300 years under the Spaniards, 50 years under the Americans. Gender stereotypes, we heard from some of our female cadets earlier about those stereotypes. And learning challenges of Generation Z. This generation that was born with a mobile on their, holding a mobile phone. How do we deal with that? So in our academy, we deal with this is a developmental training paradigm. And our main tool here is coaching and mentoring, but mainly coaching. Mentoring is about somebody who's more mature, more experienced, sharing his wisdom to others. But in the academy, we would like to train our cadets who have not much experience or wisdom to coach and help each other experience success by achieving their personal development goals, by asking non-directed questions. Everybody can be a coach, and one day they can all become mentors. So we would like to build a culture of respect and safety through this developmental environment, as opposed to a culture that just aims to pass the next audit. We don't want, as helpful as audits are, we don't want to be audit driven. We want to be driven by a culture that is founded on safety and respect. So I'm so happy Captain Leguban wrote a book on mentoring. I'd like to get a copy of that book. And we also wrote a little booklet on our leadership paradigm, how we train our cadets in our academy, our small contribution. I brought a few copies for anybody who might be interested. Thank you very much.
Mike, thank you very much. Another man inside his time.